I was not sure how much more frustration I could bear over my wife's deteriorating health. And I wasn't just another worried husband, I was a medical doctor. As a physician for more than 30 years, I was accustomed to having answers to medical questions. After graduating from the University of Colorado Medical School and doing postgraduate work at Mercy Hospital in San Diego, I settled into a successful family practice in a small city in western South Dakota. Along the way, I met and married Liz. She had some health problems, but Liz honestly thought that if she married a physician, her health would improve. Boy, was she ever wrong. Before long, our family included 3 children under the age of 4, and a busy Liz grew increasingly weary. Every mom with little children is tired, but Liz seemed unusually fatigued. Although she was only 30 years old, she told me she felt 60. As the years passed, she developed more symptoms and health problems that required several medications. By our 10th anniversary, Liz was so tired that most of the time she labored to put one foot ahead of the other. She experienced continual total body pain, overwhelming fatigue, horrible allergies, and recurrent sinus and lung infections. Finally, after testing and evaluation, Liz's doctors diagnosed her problem as fibromyalgia. This medical condition involves an array of symptoms, the worst being chronic pain and fatigue.
Can you explain to me what type of emotions that you feel when you hear your story being read like that?
Well, Sarah, I'm really thankful that I'm not in that place anymore, for one thing. But it was a really hard time as a young mother, just trying to take care of my family and not understanding why I wasn't, in quotes, normal. Obviously, I had friends and they could have other people over and have company in the evenings. I couldn't do that. At 8 or 8:30 at night, I was in bed. I could hardly function. And the sad thing is it just continued every year. I was like on a spiral staircase, going down, down, down in my health. And of course, my poor husband, he didn't know what to do either. So it was a hard time raising a family when you don't have the energy or the health to really take care of them the very best way you would like to.
Many people are unfamiliar with fibromyalgia and its symptoms. Can you explain to me what a person with fibromyalgia experiences on a daily basis?
You know, there's various stages with fibromyalgia. There's a lot of things that happen before you're diagnosed, and in fact, many people can go 10 or 15 years before a doctor really figures out that they have fibromyalgia. So it's a process. For example, for me, it started out with allergies. When I was in my 30s, I loved to ride and train horses, and I had to take a lot of medication to be around the horses. I noticed, you know, when in May and September, I always got chronic sinus infections. So that was sort of the beginning. Then the pain in my shoulders, really tight muscles, and a difficult time, you know, sleeping at night, and then waking up in the morning not feeling rested but very, very tired. So this is kind of the process that takes place, and it can continue to spiral downwards. I've known people who had fibromyalgia symptoms and they ended up with rheumatoid arthritis or multiple sclerosis or something. So I really believe it's your immune system is down, and some of the first signs of that are just a simple allergy or asthma, and you know that there's a problem there. So, like I say, it is a process, and those are some of the symptoms that I dealt with.
When I've heard you share your story in the past, you've said that even though you were 30 years old, you felt like you were 60. Can you expound on that statement for me?
Well, when you're 30 years old, you should be vivacious in the prime of your life. And when you have a fatigue or a chronic fatigue syndrome, everything you do, you have to force yourself to. One of the things that I told my husband, it was a struggle for me to put one foot in front of the other. Just think of making your brain work to just walk. Now that's something that we all do just naturally. We don't even have to think about it. But when you have a chronic fatigue syndrome, just to walk is a challenge, let alone the mental fogginess and the other things that can come along with this whole syndrome, where you can't think. I remember going to Albertsons one time shopping, and I don't even remember driving there, I came out, I couldn't remember what I went there for, and when I came out, I couldn't remember where my car was parked. Now that is really scary, and I was embarrassed about.
Well, I also remember when you bought like $150 worth of groceries, and you got home and you realized that you forgot to pick them up and put them in the car.
Absolutely. And this is one of the things with fibromyalgia, is this mental fogginess. It's very embarrassing. You think you're kind of going crazy. You don't really want to tell anybody about it because you think you're losing your mind. And really, until you're diagnosed and they actually say, oh, you have this, you really think you're kind of nutty. And you feel bad about it, but there's really nothing that you can do. There is hope out there.
Yeah, for sure. So thinking back, what started it all for you? What was the first thing that happened that made you think that your health was not okay?
The first symptoms was, like I said before, allergies. And it just started out, I thought, I am 30 years old and I'm having trouble in May and I'm having trouble in September when the pollens come out. And all of a sudden I found myself, buying some Claritin and different drugs at the time that you could get. Well, back then they were prescription. I had to go to the doctor. Now you can get them, over the counter. But that's kind of where it all started for me, was that. And then, the more responsibility I had with the young children, 3 under 4 years old, there is a lot of work that takes place with that, especially when you have a baby and you're getting up in the night and you're nursing the baby, and then you've got other little children. So what happens is the more stress that you have in your life, and some of these things are just life, you find that you start struggling with being more tired, and maybe you take a trip and you find out that you don't really recover well from that. It might take you a week or two. The other thing was even exercise. I wanted to exercise, and that was one of the things that just put me on tilt. I could not do it. So, those were some of the things. So,
can you describe for me and for our viewers the emotional battles that a person with fibromyalgia experiences?
I would say it's really hard when people invite you over for dinner and to compensate back when you can hardly get through your day. And that was always hard for me. And I had people look at me kind of funny, because I couldn't do a lot of things. And so we just kind of hunkered down, and I just did the best I could with my children. So as far as having a lot of outside relationships, I just didn't have the energy for that.
And then what was the emotional side effect? A lot of people with fibromyalgia experience depression.
Yes.
So can you explain to me how you second guess yourself and the emotional battle that is there on top of the physical battle?
Sarah, over the last 15 years, I've been able to talk to a lot of people who have this fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. And one of the things that I have discovered in that process is a lot of them are what we call high achievers or type A. So they're people who really like to be productive, they enjoy working, and I think to some degree they probably overdo it, and this can be a little bit part of the syndrome. So I know later in the process I really did get depressed because I couldn't really accomplish anything. I couldn't get up in the morning and do the things that I really desired to do, and that was very difficult. You feel very different and you become isolated because of all of this. So depression can be a key factor. I know some people get a little more depressed than others, but I would say later on in the disease when I was bedridden, yes, definitely. You just feel sort of worthless because you really can't function in life. You don't feel like you're being a good mother. You don't feel like you're being a good wife. You have all the desire in the world to want those things, but physically it's like your spirit is willing but your body is weak.
Absolutely.
And you just can't get those things done. And so you have great limitations, and that's always especially difficult for a person who's a high achiever.
Yeah, absolutely. As your daughter, I know that our family was deeply impacted by your battle with fibromyalgia. Can you explain to me how it feels to have your own health problems affect the ones that you love so deeply?
Well, there's a helplessness with all of that. You have a desire to always do the right thing, but you just physically cannot accomplish those things. So you're disabled. You have a disability, and you can't really do the things that normal people do. And that's a difficult challenge. So there's a lot of thoughts that go through your mind like, well, why me?
Mhm.
You know, why is this happening? You know, why is God allowing this in my life?
Mhm.
There's a lot of unanswered questions. And then there's also some worry about the future. If I feel like this when I'm 30 or 40, what am I going to be like when I'm 50 and 60?
And you have grandbabies.
And you have grandbabies. So you know that you're spiraling down. You know that you're losing ground each year. And so you do wonder, what am I going to be like in 5 years, or what am I going to be like in 10 years?
Mhm.
Where am I going to be? So those thoughts do come into hand. But you do really try to do the best you can to love your children. And I was very fortunate. My husband, was a very compassionate man, very concerned about my health, but in the beginning really didn't know much about fibromyalgia. We actually had a physician friend who diagnosed me in our living room. So it was a new disease for my husband even to find out back in 1995. And actually a lot more has been written on it since then, and now they really know it is a true syndrome, and they understand it much, much better. So.
Can you describe to me the emotional battle that you watched Dad experience?
Dad was great. He just really stepped in. And he worked hard all day long in his practice. And when he came home and he looked at me, many times I was excused to the bedroom just to be able to go rest. And he would take over with you kids.
Wow.
And I usually would have dinner prepared. And after we spent the time getting the 3 small children together, most husbands and wives, will, sit down and have a nice visit, have some tea or coffee, watch a movie together. I really was not able to do that with him. But he was very compassionate, very loving, very kind, and very supportive. And that made all the difference in the world. I'm sure he wondered why, although even when we were dating, I had some of these symptoms and couldn't always just, go out on the weekends and those kind of things, which was, one of the things that we struggled with kind of even in our dating. So he knew before we got married that I probably wasn't 100%, but he fell in love with me, and he still wanted to be with me, so I'm grateful for that.
And he still wants to be with
you.
30 years later.
Right.
Awesome.
Right.
In part 2, we're going to be talking about the severe pneumonia that you developed in March of 1995 and how that led you to a life-changing discovery. But I hate to leave this interview without giving our viewers some hope. And so as a person who's experienced fibromyalgia and the hopelessness that can come with that, can you tell us what it was that helped you to keep putting one foot in front of the other? What motivated you? What gave you the strength to do that on a daily basis?
Sarah, your mother is a woman of faith, and I love the Lord very much, and I know He loves me. And when I was laying there in bed for the months that I did, so sick I couldn't read a book or even watch television, I was praying. And I did not understand why it happened, but I knew that my future was full of hope, and that the plans that were out for me were going to be a good plans, not evil. And so I just hung on to that and kept praying for an answer.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I know how difficult it can be to relive the past and how painful it can be, but I feel that it's so important for people to understand where you came from and where you were at, so that they can understand how far you've come from that point.
I really have to think about all of that again, because my life is completely different now. And I think I'm kind of making up for lost time now. And I'm so thankful that I can, because I'm going to be 60 years old next year. And I'm able to do things now that I couldn't do for many, many years. And so God does answer prayer.